How did you come up with the idea of Healthtracka?
It started, officially about a few years ago when I got the call that my dad passed. So it was a tragedy. But context to that was my background is biochemistry. So I studied, biochemistry in uni. And I remember like the first internship I did, it was in a medical lab, like it was a chemistry lab in one of the biggest hospitals in the country. And I remember like for the first few weeks, I realized that doctors were coming in super upset, asking for the result of their patients. And it was until later that I realized that it was actually because 70% of all medical decisions need to be driven by medical diagnostics. So without those lab tests, the doctors would not be able to make accurate diagnosis of their patients. So of course they need it. So fast forward to when I got the call that my dad had passed. What had happened, which was surprising to us, was the doctor told us he's had hypertension and diabetes untreated for so long. And guess what? We had no idea. Nobody had an idea. He didn't know, we didn't know. By the time we were catching it, it was too late, right? His body had broken down. And at the time, it was just very unfortunate that there are millions of Nigerians, of Africans who are moving around their day-to-day activities with no idea that they have pre-existing medical conditions. So my dad's case wasn't, unique or isolated. It was like the normal thing. So it brought me back to my internship days where doctors would come in upset. And it was because since people were waiting until there was an emergency before they came into the hospital, so everything was an emergency. They needed to get the result on time or else they could lose their patient. So it was after that tragedy that I began to think about how we have to find a solution. We have to figure out a better way to access medical diagnostics, at least if we wanted to change the outcomes, right? And that was the beginning of looking for a solution and how to bring the lab closer to people.
Ife, what is Healthtracka and what problem does it solve?
So Healthtracka is an health tech company that is making medical diagnostics accessible and affordable for Africans. And we're doing that by focusing on at-home lab testing. So as I said before, one of the problems that we have in Africa with our healthcare infrastructure is that it is abysmal, actually, to say the least, right? But if you look at it even from the doctor-patient ratio, it is 1 to 6,000 as opposed to like the 1 to 600 that WHO will recommend. So there is the issue of late and non-diagnosis of health issues that is causing an increase in non-communicable diseases in Africa. So at Healthtracka, what we're trying to do is to ensure that people have access to their health information before it becomes a problem, right? And we're doing that by bringing the lab closer to them. So with Healthtracka, what we did was to eliminate all the inconveniences that has to do with accessing medical diagnostics by actually giving people a platform. So today, our users go on healthtracka.com and they're able to book pre-packaged test panels that are already designed for their own lifestyle. So you find things like cancer screening tests on our platform. You find things like STD tests on our platform. You find things like wellness checks on our platform, hormonal tests, right? That way, our users are able to book the test, and all they have to do is sit at the comfort of their home or any location, and the samples are taken at their homes. So on the back end, we already work with lab partners. So it's the same labs that your doctors use that we also use. At the end of the day, the most important thing is you want to get your health information in your hands. That way you can make informed decisions.
What were you doing before this?
So before that, I was a regular 9 to 5 person, right? Professional. My background is product marketing. So as I mentioned, I studied biochemistry in uni, but I knew that I wanted to be on the business side of things as opposed to be on the clinical. Right, so I got my very first job as a product marketing associate, right? And I grew in the ranks. But the good thing was it was one of the very first e-commerce platforms in Nigeria at the time, right? So it was tech and product in a lot of ways. So figuring out how to acquire customers while building the product for them alongside. So it was really a great experience. I moved from there to brand manager in an FMCG company. So again, typical 9 to 5. And the good thing is, throughout of my career, I've always worked closely to like the management of the company. So I'm always learning, usually most of the problems that has to do like building an organization. So that definitely has been helpful. So from the FMCG role, I went on to be the marketing lead at a multinational medical diagnostic company. Which again, interesting. Everything adds up to where I am today or what I'm doing today. So I was leading marketing. I was brought in to lead the digital transformation in the medical diagnostic company. Again, 9 to 5. It was while at the role that I actually got the opportunity to be number 3 employee at a new, early stage startup. Right? It was actually even pre-launch. So I was number 3 employee at this company just before I started Healthtracka. And I remember at this job again, it was mostly working with the founders to basically launch the product and then build out what the acquisition model and all of that was. So that was my life before Healthtracka until the tragedy happened. While on the job, and I knew that I needed to be part of this solution.